Okay, today's video is a combination video. One is I've never used this particular tool before to take U-joints out of big trucks, tractor trailers, semis, whatever you want to call them. I've always set up a block and used the jack to push them up to get these out. Today we got a special brand new tool. We're going to give it a try. And I've never used it before. I've never used one before from anybody else. This is a brand new tool. I have never even put it on a U-joint to take it off. First thing you have to do though is take all 8 of these bolts out. They hold the caps for the U-joints. I've taken 7 out of the 8 off. So I just left 1 for demonstration purposes, and I already broke it loose. So you just take all 8 bolts out like this. This one is takes a 9/16 socket or wrench, whatever you may have, and you take all 8 bolts out. And then we're going to see how this tool works that I've never used. So we're going to kind of learn this together because I've never used it. Going to try and figure it out here. I don't have any. I just fits on like that, and then I guess you go ahead and crank on the bolt here. Got to go right direction though. Like I said, I've never used a tool like this. I don't know if you're supposed to use an impact or what, but I'm just using a hand ratchet. I might have to go get an impact. I don't know. It'll probably be a whole lot easier with an impact. Like I said, I've never used this tool before. So let's see how well it works. I don't think it's pushing it up out yet, but let's keep cranking on it and see what happens, I guess. It doesn't seem all that hard. Oh yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit of a gap here now. Not much. Oh yeah, there's a good gap there. I don't know how well Jens can see it, but I'm seeing a gap here, right here, which pushing the cap up out. And I'm not putting a whole lot of effort into this. Like I said, I imagine it'd probably go a lot quicker if I used an impact, but I don't know if these tools are designed for impacts or not. But like I said, I'm not putting a lot of effort into this, and it's pushing the cap up out. Sometimes working slow and allowing things to works better than pushing things quickly. Like, I've actually put O-rings on new parts and discovered instead of trying to beat it in or anything like that, steady pressure works better with that kind of stuff, especially on Volvos and Caterpillars. Steady pressure makes it work a lot better. Seems like this thing's working pretty good. As of right now, I have no complaints. It's pushing it right out. All right, well, I mean, you just push the cap out until you can get that cap off, and then you do the same thing all the way around. So basically 4 times, and you'll get all the caps off, and then the dry shaft will come right out. Okay, I'm gonna pause this right now. At the beginning of this video, I said there would be 2 parts to it. I'm still working on the U-joint. It's giving me trouble getting out of the dry shaft, as you can see. But the second part is this is leaking right here, so I got to take this cover off. Now what I did is I took the nut off, which wasn't no big deal, and then the yoke on this one just happened to slide off. A lot of times you got to use a puller, something like that, to get them off, and I've already seen where even using that puller won't get them off, and I had to use torches and cut it off. But this one here, once I got the nut and washer off, it actually slid off without any puller. So I'm going to take all these bolts out around here, and then I'm going to take this seal out once I get this plate off, and then I'll be able to clean all this up underneath that plate, reseal it, and tomorrow when I go to get the parts for the wheel seal, which I have the wheel seal, I need the bearings and the races for the wheel. When I go get that, I'll go get this new seal here and put that new seal in, and then put this plate on. And I'm just going to use form a gasket or silicone, whatever you I prefer however you want to name it. And I'm going to clean that up real good, silicone it real good, and put a new seal in there, and then just slide the yoke back on, put the washer and nut back on, and then I got a brand new U-joint already that I'll put in this, and it'll be all back together. It'll take care of this leak all together. If you watched my video, No Good Deed Goes Unpunished, you'll know that somebody borrowed the truck, and when I got it back, this was leaking, as well as the mud flap brackets and all that, and I just never got around to doing all this. I've just been making sure the rear end's full, but seeing how I had to tear the wheel apart and I had easy access in here, I figured I'd go ahead and do this. But this is going to be the second part, and like I said, it's not that difficult. Once you get the dry shaft down, just get the yoke off, take all those bolts out, pull that piece off, replace that seal. Make sure you replace that seal, because once you mess with the seal after it's been there a while, it will leak if you don't replace it. Okay, I got all the parts today, and I'm getting ready to put the yoke back on. I've already tightened this plate down, and I did put blue Loctite on these bolts. I never use red Loctite, because when you use red Loctite, chances are the bolt's not going to come back out. I've had to actually cut bolts because people used red Loctite, and I only use blue Loctite when I do use it. I did put a little bit of blue Loctite on every one of these bolts, and now I'm going to slide the yoke on. And it really don't matter what position the yoke goes, because once it's on there, it just slides right on, and you can rotate it. So it really doesn't matter what position that goes on. And then you take the bolt and nut that I know I threw under here somewhere. Okay, I told you this, if I make a mistake, I'll be on camera about it. And this bolt and washer was not down here. I left it up above, that's why I couldn't find it. But yeah, you put the washer on. Before I put the blue Loctite on, I make sure that I get everything set up and ready with the impact, the socket, and everything. Once I put the blue Loctite on, I want to get that bolt, or that nut, nut on there and tight as soon as I can, before the Loctite actually has a chance to set up. Because once it starts setting up, then it makes it more difficult. And if it's already set up when you are actually tightening it up, then you just wasted your time, because all you're going to do is bust up the Loctite. Now, don't hold me to this, but I believe Loctite is basically just like a plastic. Once it gets hard, it just turns into a bit of a plastic and kind of clogs up the thread, so the nut or bolt or whatever you're using it on can't come back out. Okay, I'm going to hook the air line up and then put blue Loctite on and put another one. Make sure you got the impact going in the proper direction. Don't take much Loctite, just a little bit goes a long way. A lot of times all you need is like a couple drops, put it on. I mean, these nuts that go on here, they are lock nuts to begin with because the way they're made, but I just like putting, when I'm reusing, especially this nut for the yoke, I like to make sure I put a little bit of blue Loctite on just to be on the safe side. Okay, it's going to get a little noisy here, and that's all it takes to get that on there. That nut is not going to come back off, and as you can see, it spins nicely without a problem. Seeing how there's a bearing in there, that's one of the things you want to do, is make sure when you put it back together, it spins freely. Pull on the yoke, make sure that there's no play in and out, and you're all set. Now I'm getting ready to put the universal joint in, which I brought down with me. I mean, it's not a big brain teaser about how to put these universal joints in. There's a few little things I like to do when I'm putting them in. Now, I don't know how other people do it. I like to take all the caps off. I know you can't see that because it's down here. Let me turn the camera. So I take all these caps off, and I make sure that 3 of them, when I go to start, are out of the way, because I don't want a lot of dirt and stuff falling into these caps, because there's needle bearings in here and it takes grease. Now, most of the time they will not just fall in. I have never had one of these just fall in. So what I wind up doing is I wind up beating them in. But now one thing I like to do, I normally don't try and beat upward, but I like to take something, I mean a screwdriver, little pry bar, something, and locate the hole for the bolt and keep it in there while I tap it in, because that way this can't turn too far. If it turns too far, you're not going to get the bolt in, and you're going to have all kinds of trouble getting the thing to go ahead and line back up. What I'm going to do here right this moment is I'm just going to turn this. I know you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing real easy here, and I'm just going to start this cap so it doesn't fall out. As you can see, I got it started, and it is crooked. Let's see if we can straighten it out. That ain't good. I think one of the bearings just popped out. Yep, there is a gap there. So that bearing did pop out of there. I don't normally have that because I normally am not trying to photograph this and make it easy for you to see. I normally have it in a position, and I'm going to show you here in a second. I normally have the universal joint in place so it can actually keep that from happening, and I'm getting ready to do that right this moment. I'll go ahead and put the U-joint in here and put it in this cap and hold it in that cap while I go ahead and beat the U-joint or the cap in. The only reason it's not going all the way down is because the cap is started in there crooked, which I'm going to remedy here in a minute with the hammer. There we go. And it's still not set down in. There it is. Now it is. You might be able to see that it's all the way down in there. So now I take a bar, pry bar, screwdriver, anything, put it in the hole, make sure that it's lined up, and go ahead and beat it up into place. And then do the same thing on the other four. As you should be able to see, the U-joint's going up. When I go to put these bolts in, a lot of times these bolts will come with Loctite on them, a special type that works without it being wet, but these particular ones did not. So before I put the bolts in, I will be putting Loctite on them. It's the same process for all four corners. What I do now is spin it around so you guys can see. Work the U-joint down, the cap will go on it, just like so. And then try and make sure that it moves in and out freely. And then I'll put my bar in here. I can't see because I got it facing the camera right now, but then I'll just rotate it so my bar goes in and holds it so the bolts will line up. And then set the dry shaft on here, do the same thing on the dry shaft as I'm doing on this side, and that's how you put a U-joint in. No special tools required unless you want to count the socket and a hammer. I mean, I don't consider those special tools, but some people do. But it's that simple. It's harder getting them out than putting them in. Okay, here's a couple little tips. Now I got the dry shaft all back up in, front cover back up, got the hub all back together. One of the things, especially if it's your truck, this is a perfect opportunity for you to go ahead, grease the truck up, start from the front or the back and go all the way through it, because you got to grease up the rear, the universal joint that just got put in. And you might as well check the fluid in the transmission, both rear ends at the same time, because you're going to have to more than likely put oil in the back rear end or the front rear end, because that's the one I tore apart. And the only reason you're going to do a wheel seal in that front cover like that is because it was leaking. So one, you've lost oil, and two, when you pulled the hub off, you lost some of the oil that stayed in the hub. Now here's another little trick that I've learned from experience. When you're pulling a hub off, go ahead and get the tires off and all that stuff. If the drum comes off without the hub, take the drum off. If you're going to be changing the brakes, change the brakes. But then what I do is, while the brakes are off and the hub drum's off and all that, before I pull the axle, I'll jack the jack up as high as possible to the top end of the jack, which what that does, it raises the side of the differential higher than the rest of it, so the side you're working on, the oil will run back into the center part of the rear end instead of just continuously running. And what that does two things. One, it will actually help save some of the oil in the rear end and you're not losing a lot of it. Two, when you go to put the axle back in, you don't have oil running out interfering with the mating surface where the gasket is, or silicone, whatever you happen to use to put the axle back in, seal it up. So that actually helps because you don't have that stream of oil running down through the gasket, making the gasket wet, or running your silicone off, or whatever you used. But those are a couple little things that I would say go ahead and do, seeing how you just got done doing all this other work. Well, if this helps you or anybody else you are dealing with, please subscribe and hit the bell button and help me grow this channel so everybody can actually find it on the searches a lot easier. Well, everybody have a better day, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Thank you.